Diabetes Connections is brought to you by One Touch. Every touch is a step forward. By Dexcom. Take control of your diabetes and live life to the fullest with Dexcom. And by No Foods. No grain, no gluten, no guilt.
This is Diabetes Connections with Stacey Sims.
This week, the latest from Tandem, makers of the T-Slim insulin pump. We find out more about how close they are to a hybrid closed loop and other products. Spokesperson Molly McElwee Malloy was in one of the first artificial pancreas trials back in 2006. That wasn't with Tandem. And she admits it has been a tough wait for everyone.
The real thing is that I had to learn that this process is a long road. It's longer than it should have been, but we're here now. And I'm getting to see it in the pivotal trial, and I'm getting to help walk it forward and make sure we cross the finish line.
Molly lives with type 1 herself. She's a nurse and a diabetes educator, and she's got a lot of news from Tandem. Plus, in our Know Better segment, 2 potential and very small insulin delivery devices are getting grants. We'll tell you about that. And it is almost time for Diabetes Podcast Week. This podcast is not intended as medical advice. If you have those kinds of questions, please contact your healthcare provider. It all starts now on Diabetes Connections. Welcome to another week of the show where we educate and inspire about type 1 diabetes by sharing stories of connection, talking to athletes and artists, celebrities with type 1, everyday people living with diabetes, and, like this week, the healthcare companies. I am excited to talk to Tandem. We switched to Tandem just a couple of months ago. My son has type 1 diabetes. He was diagnosed right before he turned 2. He is now 13. My husband has type 2. I have a background in broadcasting, and that's how you get the podcast. And yeah, we switched to Tandem. I've mentioned this before. We were longtime Animas users since Benny, my son, was 2.5. He went on a pump 6 months after diagnosis, and we only switched to Tandem because of the larger cartridge size. And I talk more about that during the interview. Now, of course, Animas is no more, although the pumps are still out there and they're still servicing them. That's a different show. It's a different interview, but there's lots of information about that. If you go back and search at diabetes-connections.com, there's a search box in the upper right. You can always find whatever show you need, whatever subject. Just look for the keyword. You may notice I don't number these episodes. I number them for my use, but as a listener, I've never really cared about the number. I can't remember it that way. I just want to know, when did Stacey talk about Animas? Boom, go search for that. Anyway, I also need to mention, before we get to the interview with Molly McElwee Malloy, she mentions a conference called ATTD, and I think she talks about what it is. But just to be clear, because it comes up a lot, especially in the beginning, that is Advanced Technologies and Treatments for Diabetes. It's a conference February 14th in Austria. And the reason it's important, she can share only so much about what's going on at Tandem. There's some studies that they're going to be releasing at that conference. So we'll circle back, make sure you have all the information. I'll link it up. But you'll hear ATTD. There's a lot of diabetes conferences out there. That's the one she's referencing. The other thing I want to be clear about in this interview, look, we all have our personal biases, and I try to be straight up front and honest with you. I'm very biased for Tandem right now because it's what we use. I would like them to have these new products tomorrow. Not because I own stock in the company. I do not. Not because they are a sponsor. They are not. But because my kiddo uses their product and I want him to have the very best care that he can. I listened back to the interview, frankly, and I think there's a little cheerleading going on there. I just wanted to be upfront with you about why that is. And I'm not rooting against anybody else. Let's have lots of companies doing lots of great things. And speaking of sponsors, Diabetes Connections is brought to you by One Touch. One Touch has been a trusted brand in blood glucose management for more than 30 years. This past year, Pharmacy Times and U.S. News and World Report named One Touch as a #1 pharmacist recommended brand in blood glucose monitoring devices based on a survey of pharmacists nationwide. Find out more about One Touch brand products at diabetes-connections.com and click on the One Touch logo. My guest this week is the new Clinical Services Manager at Tandem Diabetes. Molly McElwee Malloy has been on the show before when she was the head of patient engagement and director of marketing for Type 0 Technologies. She is also a nurse and a CDE and lives with type 1 herself. Molly, thanks so much for joining me again. Congratulations on the new role. It's great to talk to you.
Great. It's great to be here. Thank you so much for having me on.
Oh, there's so much to talk about. I really appreciate you spending some time to go over this because it seems like Tandem's just been firing out the news releases over the last couple of weeks. It's a busy time to be there.
It's busy for sure.
Wonderful. Let's just jump right in if we could. And I do want to talk more about your personal story a little bit later on because it's a great one, and we'll get into type 0. But let's just jump into this latest study I saw that was released. That this is the successful completion of the first pilot study using a hybrid closed loop system. So my understanding on this is that the hybrid closed loop that's out right now is the Medtronic 670. Is that what we're talking about, this similar technology? Tell me what this pilot study looked at.
Okay, well, I'm going to break this into a few different pieces. So first, let's tackle the study part. This was a safety and feasibility study, which takes the closed-loop algorithms that we know and love from the UVA group that were then translated to type 0 technologies and then were licensed to Tandem Diabetes Care. So those algorithms were existing on a phone that was controlling the pump in previous clinical trials. So in order to really test the product as we want to launch it, we had to put those algorithms into the pump. And what this trial was about was testing that first time using the embedded algorithms into the traditional Tandem pump as you and I know it. And so that was the safety and feasibility study that we had, which was very successful. And we were accomplished that, and that leads us now to be able to go into the pivotal trial with the embedded product. That will be what we present to the FDA when we're ready to do that. Regarding results being shown, upcoming ATTD conference in February will be where those results will be released. And I realize this may be disappointing for listeners. They want to hear it right now. But the good news is that we're moving on to the pivotal trial, and I'd be happy to talk about those the releases about the data after that conference is over.
Sure. I understand. But you can't move on to the pivotal trial if you have too many issues with the first one, I would assume. Safe to say?
Safe to say. And that's why you run it. I mean, you want these things to be tested, right, before you put them on people in a large clinical study. So, and then how is our system different than Medtronic? I have to say, first disclaimer before I answer that question, all of the things we're talking about right now for the Control-IQ hybrid closed loop for Tandem is in clinical studies, and they still have to go through the FDA review, and a lot can change through that process. Whatever I described today is subject to change through the steps required to get to market. So just full disclosure. But here's what I can tell you. The system is partnered with Dexcom to use the G6 sensor, and we're using several sophisticated algorithms that are working together to keep blood glucose in range. And one of the big differences with our system is that it's designed not only to modulate basal up and down in response to changing glucose values, which just means turning basal up and turning basal down, but it's also designed to issue corrections for high blood glucose. So in the clinical trials that I ran when I was at UVA, I saw this particularly be very, very helpful in a number of situations. But when we talk about bolusing for carbohydrates, you and I know this is more of an art than a science. Sometimes you're eating out and you get a big wild number, you're really guessing at it, and you may not have the right information. We're doing our best guess as we live with diabetes and we bolus for diabetes. But if we're a little bit over or a little bit under, the way that the hybrid closed loop system for Tandem is designed, Control-IQ, is that we can accommodate that. We can accommodate under-bolusing for carbohydrates with corrections, and we can accommodate over-bolusing at the same time. So in clinical trials, I have seen this work in these types of situations. So that is the way the algorithm is designed to work, so that there's a little bit of leeway. You don't have to be exactly right, exactly perfect all the time. With bolusing, which you and I both know is not possible with diabetes. So that's the way that things have been designed to accommodate things. And the other way in clinical trials I've seen this be really, really helpful is overnight. So I don't know about your experience, there's fun, but sometimes, obviously for me, pre-CGM era, sometimes I would be high at night and I wouldn't know it. And then I would have been high for 4 hours. And when I woke up, and then I had 4 hours of highs, right? I have to then get back down. Now, obviously, I get an alert from my Dexcom. I can get up. I can do things. But what if we just slept instead? So that's really where this algorithm can be really helpful, is that we can kind of accommodate these things while people are sleeping. In clinical trials, I've seen this at UVA, watching people recover from high blood sugar overnight, getting down to the goal glucose of 120 in the morning. So that's something that I'm really excited about. Obviously, that is something I've seen in clinical trials, and it's not a promise of what the product does when you finally get it into your hands. But this is what I know and love about the system.
That's great. So again, with the disclaimer that things can change, can you share if the goal of the Tandem system will be a blood sugar of 120, like the Medtronic is?
I cannot share that right now.
The other thing I'd love to know is, and we are very open, we use Tandem now. We switched just a couple of months ago, basically for the bigger cartridge, because this was before Animus went under. We've used Animus for a very long time, but my son really, his insulin needs, like a lot of teenagers, went way up. So in terms of what it looks like, it would be the Tandem X2, the T-Slim X2 pump, the Dexcom, the G6, and what else? I mean, in other words, what kind of hardware are we talking about here? I think my son basically has everything but the algorithm and the upgrade to G6, right?
Correct. Absolutely. So the X2 pump is designed to be able to receive software updates, and that is, that's the beauty of that pump. It's not a dumb brick. You can update it. And the G6, you would just need to wear the sensor. So there's no other parts. That's it.
We'll get right back to my interview with Molly. She's about to talk about the predictive low glucose suspend, what Tandem is calling basal IQ. But first, Diabetes Connections is brought to you by Dexcom. One of the best things about using the Dexcom G5 mobile CGM system is the share function. As a parent, caregiver, friend, or spouse, you can use a separate Dexcom Follow app and help the person you care about manage diabetes in real time. As a parent, that gives me so much peace of mind. Even as we change things up, as Betty's getting older, give more independence, but it is an amazing safety net, and it just helps give all of us peace of mind. As I'm sitting here recording the podcast, I can grab my phone, I can look up his blood sugar, and we have a system. If he's above or below for a certain amount of time, I will text him. And that's changed as he's gotten older, right? Because he needs to make decisions and be more independent. You can use the Dexcom G5 mobile CGM system with iOS or Android now, as long as there's an internet connection. The Dexcom G5 Mobile is the only CGM approved for adults and children ages 2 and older with diabetes. Do not make treatment decisions based upon share and follow readings. Always confirm with your compatible smart device or Dexcom reader. For more information, go to diabetes-connections.com. And now back to my interview with Molly McElwee Malloy. I want to ask about another feature. We're not done. We're going to be talking a lot more about this and about the software updates that are able to be done. But can you talk about the predictive low glucose suspend feature? My understanding is that this is in the timeline. I know we can't talk specifics, but that this would be the first step before any hybrid closed loop would come out. Where do we stand on it? Is it submitted to the FDA? And can you explain what it does again in layman's terms?
Sure, absolutely. So predictive low glucose suspend is the product we are calling basal IQ. We plan to launch the summer of this year. And I can't speak to the pivotal trial results yet because those are going to be presented at ATTD. And that is something that obviously I would love to talk to you after those are released. But PLGS, or predictive low glucose suspend, is very different than what I think the current market has experienced with Medtronic's threshold suspend that was launched several years ago. So it sounds like it's a similar product, but it's really not. So it's not just suspending insulin. It is decreasing insulin in the response to the downward trend of your blood glucose and values that are predicted to be less than 80 in the next 30 minutes. So once we predict in the next 30 minutes you're going to be less than 80, the system starts taking action. And then once you're above 80 and predicted to stay above 80, in the next 30 minutes, the basal will resume its new normal function. And this can happen, while you're sleeping. It's not something that you as the user have to interact with. So it's a really beautiful, intuitive way to put this together. As with all of the Tandem products, they've done significant amount of usability research for the diabetes community to develop a really intuitive system. And to be honest, I'm really excited about this one. Obviously really head over heels excited about hybrid closed loop, but this is on the horizon. This is this summer. And I'll be able to just download the update to my X2. So it's pretty great. It works with the G5 sensor, which a lot of people are already using.
So just to read between the lines here, if you can't tell me, that's okay. Has it been submitted to FDA? Because I know that I know a few people who were in the pivotal study that ended not too long ago. And they loved it. I mean, they were blogging about it. It's no secret. It's pretty easy to find.
Right, absolutely, yeah. They have some great quotes, great blog posts. I can say that we are on track.
Got it.
We are on track with the FDA, and as soon as we know something, we'll let you guys know. But definitely on track for a summer launch. Great.
So Tandem announced late last year that in 2018, it'll make any new features, like that basal IQ or whatever it comes out, that it'll make them available at no cost to people who are currently using the t:slim X2 through that updater. That is a sea change in diabetes land. In other words, you would not have to pay for the upgrade. Am I reading all of that correctly?
You are. And for Tandem, it's simple. We know the patient wants the newest technology, and we know we have updates to offer in 2018. And we know we can do this by a simple download to the pump. So, an example, 2017, we, following the approval of the integration of G5, we were able to offer that same feature, updating to free for our users on the X2 over the internet. And while we may not be able to maintain a free upgrade forever, we can do this for 2018. And we know the importance of accelerated developments in technology, and waiting for 4 years for the next product is really an unrealistic ask at this time for any user. So we'll be, after 2018, kind of individually judging whether some of these are free, some of these have some costs, some need a prescription, some need additional training. But I would like to note that Tandem plans to allow for online training modules for existing X2 pumpers using basal IQ. So when we get the basal IQ update released this summer, if you're a current user, you can do an online training module and then update your pump. You don't have to make an appointment. You will need a prescription, but you won't have to make an appointment with your trainer to go in and have that training done, which would save people a lot of time. And then you're right, up until recently, the model for insulin pump innovation didn't change much. There was a 4-year warranty cycle. People would put on the current pump, and there wasn't a lot you could do in the meantime. And I really feel like Tandem has changed this with remote updates. It's a different market when you can update that way.
It's interesting to get your perspective on this, too, because as a nurse, as a CDE, you're comfortable with an online module. I mean, I think that sounds great. As a parent who's been, my kid's been on an insulin pump for 10 and a half years at this point. We think we know what we're doing. It's kind of nice to not have to go be retrained for everything. That sits well with you as a professional in healthcare?
Oh, absolutely. So I'm a big proponent of telehealth. If I can get something done from my pajamas at home, please let me do it. Let me do it, please. But I think that the big thing here, and then a lot of people, are nervous about telehealth and how that works and online training modules, but education has changed over the years, right? We are doing more and more online. And I think as a healthcare community and as medical device community, as we prepare for the future, we need to embrace things like online training. There'll be cases where this wouldn't be appropriate. You're a brand new pumper. English is not your first language. There's a lot of circumstances where this would not be a good way to learn the pump. But like your son has 10 years or so of pumping experience, is already an X2 user. The interface really isn't that different. There's an extra feature added, but just understanding that feature can be accomplished through an online training module. And that way we also have evidence that training took place, that you were able to access that and that you did that, and we can answer any questions you have following up, but we can make sure that you've gotten that. Some people, we talk about this a lot as diabetes educators, that when somebody orders a pump, obviously there's a training and there's all this stuff that happens, and those things happen for a reason. If you're a new pumper or you're new to this type of product pumper, switching from a different pump, there are intricacies, there are things that you need to know, and it really does, it's in your best interest to have that training. But once you have that and you're doing well on your pump and you're seeing your healthcare provider and there's just a feature change, there's no reason why we can't accomplish that through online training.
I have many more questions about Tandem and products and pipelines, but let's take a moment here and just talk about you. As you listen, though, I would urge you, go back and listen to my first interview with Molly. You'll get a lot of good information, and you can also see more about where the UVA type 0 algorithm came from and more really about the background of all of this. I'll link that up in the show notes so that it's easy to find. But Molly, let's talk about you for a minute. And again, we did this in the first interview, but tell me your story. When were you diagnosed with type 1?
Sure. I was diagnosed when I was 20, so 19 years ago. And that's, everybody knows my age. But I was diagnosed at 20. I was a junior at James Madison University. It was close to Christmas break. I hadn't been feeling well for a while. I'd been losing a lot of weight, and I'm not a tiny, skinny girl, so losing a lot of weight was really weird for me. I remember borrowing a dress for a formal on a Thursday, and then on Sunday for the formal, it was 2 sizes too big.
Wow.
And I remember that being like a real sign of, okay, yes, I'm losing weight, yes, I'm sick, and yes, this is an emergency. Wow. I went home for Christmas break. Of course, we've been to the doctor. I've been misdiagnosed as having type 2 diabetes, and was told to eat a diet low in carbs and low in calories, which was weird because I'd lost about 40 pounds at that point. So, obviously, and at that time, I guess there wasn't, people at 20 weren't being diagnosed with type 1 diabetes as they are now. Mm. So obviously, year over year, the diagnosis of type 1 has gone up and diagnosis in adults, and I'm sure a lot of misdiagnoses have been corrected. But I was thinking, I just need to diet more, I need to exercise more, this isn't working. And that, by then I was like 100 pounds. Again, I'm not a little person. That was very tiny for me. So the last clear memory I have is I was drying my hair, and I just remember thinking, it's so hard to stand here and dry my hair. It's so hard just to hold my hands up. And that's the last clear memory I had before I was hospitalized. So obviously it was, DKA and the whole 9 yards and lots of fluids and lots of insulin and lots of treatment. But I was blessed to get treatment in time. I didn't lose any organ function. I didn't have any damage. It's really, truly a miracle that I'm talking to you today. I should not have made it through that without serious complications. So thank you, whatever guardian angel I have. And, it took me several years to kind of realize that I wanted to do something with diabetes after that. I had it. I was managing it. I was doing good. I am still one of those like super anal retentive people who was checking the blood sugar all the time, and I counted my carbs, and I was like, yes, I got that one right, or I got this one wrong. It was sort of a game, how much of this I could win. And it took, you do what you can to keep yourself interested, right? But in 2006, I participated in my first artificial pancreas trial, and I've been doing some clinical studies for the University of Virginia as a participant for a little while. Whether it's you check your blood sugar 20 times a day, and take this test, or give this feedback on this product. I was sort of game for anything, and I didn't really realize the impact this would have on my life when I signed the consent to do this trial, but it was the first inpatient study of an artificial pancreas. It was a laptop. It was an Omnipod insulin pump. And it was my physician, who was Stacey Anderson, who's still at the University of Virginia, who was going to the laptop every 15 minutes to get advice on what to bolus me for whatever is basal or correction or whatever was happening, walking over to me, delivering that dose, and then documenting it in the computer. So she did this, it was over 30 hours. of doing this. And I know she was exhausted, but I slept like a dream. And I had great blood sugar control. And it was amazing to me that like someone could give you answers of what to do next. Because with diabetes, really, I mean, we're all just doing the best we can, right? Nobody's perfect. We use the best tools we have at our disposal, and still we run the same experiment every day, and it can go sideways at any moment. Right. So for me, getting that peace, getting that real serenity in that time was life-changing. And I said to them, and I was like, I want to work on this. I want to do this. And they were like, sure. Okay. Like everybody says that kind of, like, I was like, no, really, like, I want to work on your team. Like, what do I need to do? And luckily they'd known me for a few years, so it didn't seem like a stalker or a crazy person. But they were like, we could use a nurse. And I was like, that's fine. I'll go back to school. I'll get a nursing degree. And they were like, looked at me like, okay, go ahead. But I did it. And they hired me the month after I graduated. So I've been working on this professionally since 2010, but I feel like on a spiritual journey, this has been on my path since 2006. So the closed-loop algorithms, I worked at UVA as a research nurse, as coordinator, as a diabetes educator. I worked at Type Zero on trying to smooth out how we were going to commercialize these algorithms and what does it really take on a user interface, and how can we make this a really smooth process, to now coming to Tandem for the pivotal trial of this, this product that I know and love. It's a dream come true for me. This is me following my bliss since 2006. So I'm very honored to be where I am right now, and to be talking to you, and to be working with the diabetes community. It's really, honestly, this is it for me.
That's right.
This is really all I've ever wanted.
Wow. All right, and I'll ask you then to continue that thought, taking off your Tandem marketing hat for just a second. As a person with Type 1, it's 11 years since 2006. And I know It's exciting. We're getting this. It's got to be frustrating over that time. I mean, I know that, when Benny was diagnosed and they were like, well, in 3 to 5 years, you'll have this artificial pancreas. And I, having been a medical reporter, I said, yeah, sure. I didn't really I never follow timelines at all. I've been very lucky that way, in a weird way. Has it been frustrating? Are you excited? The same kind of question. The flip side of it is, and are you excited that it really is, we're on the precipice?
Yeah, honestly, after the feasibility trial that we had, had that trial, and then we realized we could move into the pivotal trial after that, I cried because I was like, and here it is. Yeah. And this is it. So I totally get that. But when I was diagnosed, I was told there would be a cure in 5 years. Oh.
Thank goodness we were never told that. Oh. I would have laughed. Well, I'm a terrible patient, because when you are a health reporter or a medical reporter and you've seen things kind of come and go. Yeah. I always tell the story that I covered the glucose watch way back when.
Oh, that.
Yeah, and that was supposed to. Yeah, it was supposed to read your glucose through your skin. It was a watch. It was in the mid 90s, but it burned everybody. So of course it didn't really stay on the market very long. But I bet if I went back and found the story I did on that, it would be headline. Definitely would have been, no more blood draws or no more finger pricks for people with diabetes. The miracle, whatever. So.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that perspective
I totally
is there.
Remember that one. So yes.
I should try to find an old glucose watch. So listen, go ahead.
I bet you could. I bet you could go on eBay and find it. But so if I hadn't been directly involved in the research, I think I would be a crazy person by now, with waiting. But being intimately involved, and I had to be sat down and explained many times, Molly, this is a process. There's a regulatory process. There's a clinical process. There's this process. Because I was always saying, why can't I skip and go ahead 5 spaces? And they're like, doesn't work like that. So I've learned, and the team at UVA was so incredibly patient with me, because I was like, a dog with a bone, let's go. But they're always motivated and very excited. But the real thing is that I had to learn that this process is a long road. It's longer than it should have been, but we're here now, and I'm getting to see it in the pivotal trial, and I'm getting to help walk it forward and make sure we cross the finish line. So 11 years is frustrating. It's maddening at times, but being able to see why those clinical trials had to happen, because this is an algorithm that, not just an algorithm, it's several algorithms, but this is a system that has to work with a lot of different patient populations. Mm-hmm. And it took me seeing that in clinical trials to understand the validating, the testing, the reasons you ask these questions. What could we do better here? Why did this go wrong here? What is a human behavior that's interacting with the system here that we could anticipate or change? And so it's really a mature system. It doesn't feel like it's not novice. It's not something that is being put out in a naive way. This is a very mature, very well thought out system. And I'm so excited to see it moving into pivotal trials, honestly. And I cried because I'm happy, I'm relieved, I'm excited. 11 years is a long time. People have been waiting a lot longer than that. People, like you said, we're told 3 to 5 years is going to be something. 3 to 5 years. If we all had a nickel for every 3 to 5 years, we could all retire, That's the way it would go. But and we couldn't have anticipated that it would be this complicated to get to this point. But we're here now, and I'm super excited to see the pathway forward, physically see it in front of me. Where is it going? It's not a pie in the sky anymore.
Well, I do have to ask you some business questions. Sure. And I know that we're trying to address a lot here, so I appreciate anything you can tell me on this. Since Tandem came on the scene, really since day one, there's been talk it will not last. It's too small, it doesn't have enough money, the market's not big enough. Can I ask you to address that? Because I think when Animas closed, that really, and Johnson & Johnson just shuttered it, it scared a lot of people who don't want Medtronic to be the only ones in town. Nobody wants any kind of monopoly on this, except maybe the one company who would benefit. But can you assure us that Tandem is here to stay?
Yes, of course, Animas exiting the market gave everyone a scare, myself included. As a person with diabetes, we don't want to lose choices, right? As an industry, we don't want to lose competition because that drives innovation and value. And in technology, the minute you stop innovating is the minute you become irrelevant. So I got to say, Tandem, they're a small company, and they've always been up against the rumor mill that they're too small and they won't make it, and they're too new. And I can't speak in detail about the financial side, but I can tell you I took a job with Tandem because I believe in them. This is my livelihood. I support my family by working here, and I'm putting my vote in their future. I have all the confidence that this will be very positive. And the pre-release 2017 earnings that they put out earlier this month was very positive. And I have to say, Tandem has put out 5 products in 5 years. That is an unheard of amount of innovation for a medical device company. And this is one thing that I really so value about Tandem is they're not going to make one thing, put it on the shelf, and then sit around congratulating themselves. It's not who they are. They're moving on to the next thing. They're moving on to improving what they have. Innovate, make better. You have a medical device that can be updated. It's in the brick anymore. It's on the shelf. So innovation is going to be driving this, and you update it and you move forward. So it's something I'm really excited about. And I get there's always going to be rumors and competitors are always going to say things, but 5 products in 5 years, I would like to see someone else do that.
Another question I wanted to make sure to ask is about Tandem's offer or current offers to Animas customers. Look, I'm not a business major, but this does seem like a good chance to grab some new people. When Animas went out of business, when Johnson & Johnson closed it, I was contacted by Omnipod, Insulet said, here's our offer. I was already a Tandem customer. I had told the story before, just a couple of weeks before that happened. We had switched to the T-Slim because of the cartridge size. So I never saw the Tandem offer. I assume there is one. Could you explain to Animas customers who may still be looking for something new what Tandem is offering?
Sure. So Tandem is absolutely offering something. For Tandem, it's pretty simple. We know the patient wants the newest technology, and we know that we have updates we can offer. This is also the most closely aligned to people who are current Animas users as far as using a tubed pump. We use some of the same sets as far as infusion sets go. We use the same CGM. So it really does make sense to do that. And I know Omnipod is offering a very different offer than what we can offer because their product is so different. There's sort of a free 30-day trial, the bulk of which is made of disposable components. Their pumps are disposable. And our pump is a durable medical device warranted for 4 years. So we have an offer for people to pay a fully refundable $999 to receive a pump they can use for 2 years. If they decide to return the pump to us in the first 60 days, they get a full refund. So this program would cost them nothing. If they keep the pump and purchase a Tandem pump, the $999 goes towards the cost of pump supplies or the deductible, whatever we have to do to apply that. If their insurance covers the pump and supplies in full, we would refund the deposit back to them. If they decide to return the pump after 6 months and don't purchase a new Tandem device, we would refund a prorated amount. These details are available on the website, but it is important to note this offer is valid through the end of March only.
You're talking about all the products that are coming out, and that is a very respectable number. But did I see that Tandem had filed a patent for something, it looked like a remote? Can you talk patents here or some things that, that are in the works?
Sure. So Tandem has issued a number of patent applications that relate to current and future products. And obviously, that's an important part of our business strategy. But we have one as it relates to the remote control of insulin pumps. We have a new product in development that is made up of a smaller pump that has a dedicated touchscreen controller. Smaller pump on the body with a dedicated touchscreen controller. Our hope is that this could be controlled by a smartphone eventually, but since that regulatory path is a little unclear, as you can imagine, we are going to go full speed ahead with an independent controller for this insulin pump for now, and we will obviously be pursuing both paths. But as people talk about smartphones controlling things, obviously there's security vulnerabilities and compatibility issues. So obviously we'll be pursuing both the regulatory path forward for a dedicated touchscreen controller, which is the patent related to that remote bolus, is really where you're going to see it first.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it was such a big part of the Animas system. We still miss it. So will it be, just to be clear, whether it's on the phone or a separate device, it will be able to control the pump, but the pump will still independently be controlled on its own? In other words, buttons on the pump, control on the remote, both could be used. Buttons
on the pump I cannot answer right now, but
I'm sorry, touch screen on the pump? I mean, I don't mean buttons.
Am I asking
it the wrong way?
No touch screen on the pump. So this will be this is a pump that is it will have a short infusion set, and then it will be physically attached to the body. So, it's not like a long tubed pump as you think of tubed pumps, although it does use an infusion set technology.
Oh, very interesting. So this is a different look than the X2 currently.
Correct.
Right now.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize that was part of it. I just thought we'd get a remote control.
Right. No, yes. Tandem's already working on the next thing. So
awesome.
So that's something we're excited about.
Can I even ask about the timeline on something like that?
You can absolutely ask. I can't give you any answers right now because obviously it's still in development. But I can tell you it is on our timeline of things to do. So we are working on it. And as soon as there is any kind of timeline that I can discuss, I will definitely give you a call.
Excellent. That's really interesting. Yeah. One thing that I put on Facebook that we were going to be talking to you, and one of the questions that came up was about the Bluetooth radio range and things like, the G5 integrated X2, if people have lost signal, because frankly, we had experienced that a little bit. Is that something that is being looked at as an improvement? Was this something that came up in the predictive low glucose suspend studies? Anything that you can say on that?
Okay, so I can't speak to the study. I can speak as a user and as for troubleshooting purposes. Face the insulin pump out. If you're using the G5, face it out. And I know for people who put it in their shirts or their bras or in the inside of their pants, usually they're facing the screen to their body, and that is blocking the Bluetooth signal. So turn it out, face it out. If you need to, same side of the body, there shouldn't be an issue at that point. If there is, please contact customer support and we will work through some other things with you. But it's one of the reasons I'm super excited that we'll be going to G6 with hybrid closed loop.
Another question that came up was, is the pump waterproof? And I know there's different ways of talking about this, but let me ask you, as someone who uses it, can this be worn? One person said, my son wants to know if he can shower with it. And another person said, can we swim with it, like an hour in the pool? I don't know how you shower with a tubed pump. I guess you rest it on the soap dish or something.
Yeah, I don't think I would be talented enough to do that. I think for showering, I would disconnect. I would say, please disconnect. Obviously, we can withstand a little bit of water. That's not an issue. But, that's an opportunity to charge your pump while it's off your body. It's 10 minutes or so. I think there's probably a certain mentality about disconnecting, and maybe that's more a behavioral thing to talk about. Do you feel comfortable disconnecting? What's behind that issue? I wouldn't wear it for an hour in the pool. I would disconnect for the pool. And salt water is another issue. So I often see this, you probably see this on social media, people who say, oh, I have a waterproof pump, and then I went swimming in the ocean. No waterproofing test takes anything into salt water. So word to the wise, the ocean is not a tested resource for waterproofing. It will corrode your pump, no matter whose pump it is. If it's a tubed pump, salt water is going to do some damage. So while you can get the pump wet, I don't know that I would swim for an hour with it. I don't know that I would bother to shower with it. I think that's an opportunity to disconnect and charge.
Got it. Another question came up. When will the AutoSoft XC infusion set be out? What is that?
Right. That is the infusion set that a lot of Animas pumpers were super, super enthused about using and don't want to give up. And so there's, obviously, if it's got a very loyal following, then it's something that we should be investigating. And so we've done that, and we are integrating it into our product line. I believe I'm allowed to say that will be available in the first quarter, but I'm going to double check that, and we can email you an update that you can then release to your listeners. So I do know that we will have that.
It's funny, Molly. I should know this, but we really only know what we use. I'm trying to think, is the AutoSoft, is that the angled inserter? How come I don't know what that is?
Sure. The AutoSoft 30 is the infusion set. It's an all-in-one infusion set angled with a 30-degree angle insertion and a reversible connector. So I think previously with the Animas pump, in that infusion set that they had, the Comfort Short and 30, you might correct me on that. You could only plug it in one way, there was a male-female type connector, and you had to keep turning it around until you could get it right. But this is one that we've made an improvement on that you can put it from either angle. So it's a flexible cannula, automatic insertion, but again, it's that 30-degree angle that some people are really looking for.
Yeah. It's a good reminder, too, that, and I learned this a long time ago, if something's not working for you with diabetes, don't assume it's you. It's very likely that there is another option, whether it's an angled infusion set or a steel infusion set or a different skin prep wipe thing or whatever. I spent a long time when Benny was 2 with an infusion set that didn't work for us. It's a long story and I won't tell it again, but my advice always is, there's a lot that we don't know, that we don't even know.
Oh, absolutely.
So if something's not working well for you, as you listen here, talk to your educator, talk to your endo, or ask, even on Facebook, sometimes you can get some advice to bring to your healthcare professional to say, I've heard of this, maybe it'll work better. So, thanks for explaining that. I wasn't quite sure what that was.
Yeah. Anybody who's having trouble with an infusion set and has only been trying one type of infusion set, your prescription covers infusion sets. It doesn't cover one specific type of infusion set. So you can call wherever you get your infusion sets from and ask for a different type without a new prescription. So if you want to try the steel set, you want to try, a 90 degree, you want to try a 30 degree, you can do that without changing your prescription.
That is great to know. Thanks for that reminder. Good stuff. So the folks in the CGM and the Cloud group wanted me to ask you, a bunch of them asked, can you make this pump open source? Please release a rogue software update that unlocks the X2. I'm laughing because I kind of think you can't answer this as an official marketing person for Tandem, but they're asking about open source APS solutions, open source software so people can create their artificial pancreas systems. Can you speak to that at all?
I can't speak to open APS, but what I will speak to is the value of clinical trials and actually having a regulatory process in place to make sure that you have a safe product. And having seen closed loop go from the hospital to outpatient to in all the iterations in between and all the changes that had to get made along the way to make it safer, to adapt to different populations, to adapt for behavior. I mean, I'm a true believer in testing something. I mean, this is an insulin pump. It is delivering insulin to your body or your child's body or your loved one's body. And that is a serious thing. So I'm a big fan of the regulatory process. And I know, poo-poo on Molly for not being rah-rah here, but that's the regulatory voice speaking, but it's also the safety voice speaking. And as a representative of Tandem, I obviously cannot comment on open APS or rogue software, but I will say that we're big proponents, and I'm a huge fan of testing things before they are released in a true clinical trial process.
All right, so to circle all the way back around in the clinical trial process here, the hybrid closed loop pivotal study, I know you can't tell us too much. As you said, you'll circle back when you can and give us more information. Are you recruiting people for that? Is there a place they can go to maybe take part?
Sure. So the CRO, or the clinical research organization that is kind of managing that trial, is the JADE Center for Health and Research. They're in Tampa, Florida. And we're working with all of the research sites. So if you email info@jabe.org, and I will give you a link to post to your website, you can find out where's the center that is closest to you that would make sense. You want to call them and inquire about being in a pivotal trial.
All right, I'll be honest with you, Molly. That email, send it to me because you're going to get one from me. I'd love to see I don't know if you're doing pediatrics, but I'd love to try to get Benny into one of those trials.
We are doing pediatrics, so yeah.
Oh, fantastic. Oh, I'm sorry, and that reminds me before I let you go, the basal IQ, that predictive low glucose suspend, is that in the works for pediatrics as well in the first iteration? When you say summer, is that going to be for everybody and for kids, or can you comment on that? Is that going to be secondary?
I can't comment on that because that's going to be in the labeling that comes with the kind of the decision that comes with the FDA cooperation. So I cannot crystal ball that one for you yet.
But there were children who took part in that last pivotal trial, right?
Yes, there were.
Okay. Well, I really appreciate you coming on. I mean, we spent a lot of time here with some far-ranging stuff, but it really is great. And again, it's the first time that Tandem has come on, and so I had a ton of questions. Thanks for putting your head on the block to be the one to bear the brunt. But I'm a happy customer. I'm definitely looking forward to many things that are coming, wishing the company well, and wishing you well, Molly. I mean, thanks for all you're doing, and I'm really excited for this. So thanks again. I appreciate it.
Thank you, and thank you so much for the opportunity. I really appreciate it, and I hope we do talk soon.
You're listening to Diabetes Connections with Stacey Sims.
Lots more information at diabetes-connections.com. And again, I'll circle back after the conference that's happening in mid-February and link up more information. My understanding is that some of the folks from Night Scout that do a regular video feature are going to be talking to Tandem at that conference, I think. And we'll link that up so you can see all the information if that happens. Just a lot of good stuff coming up. And how about that new pump that Tandem is working on? The one she mentioned there went by kind of quickly, but it sounds like the insulin pump that Lilly is working on, where it has a tube, but you can also wear it flat on the body, or Bigfoot's pump where you control it from your phone. I still want buttons on the pump or a touchscreen on the pump, whatever, and a remote. I loved that about Animas, right? You have a remote. If you don't have the remote with you, use the pump. Well, nobody asked me how to design a pump. That's how I would do it. Although I guess in the future, everybody will just be on their phone and using it that way. Again, big thanks to Tandem. That's the first time they've come on to talk about any of their products with us, and I really appreciate that. Look forward to talking to Molly and others from the company in the future. Time now for our Know Better segment, brought to you by No Foods. And this week, I want to bring your attention to two tiny insulin delivery devices. But first, let me tell you about No Foods. We are big fans of No Foods. I really enjoy their gluten-free products. I was asked by my doctor to go gluten-free a couple of months ago, and it has really helped my issues. I don't have celiac, but I had some issues that really needed to be addressed, and I'm really thankful that he suggested it. I'm really thankful that No Foods is there to make it easier. And now, No Foods has No Better chocolate chips. Now, these chocolate chips have 50% fewer calories than the leading healthy chocolate chip. They are vegan, they are kosher, they are nut, soy, and dairy-free, as well as gluten, grain, wheat, and egg-free. Pretty interesting stuff, and you can find out much more about the chocolate chips and about the waffles and the donuts and the bread slices, the bread crumbs. I cook with the breadcrumbs now, and my kids don't even know the difference. Find out more about No Foods. Just go to Diabetes-Connections, click on their logo, and you can always use the promo code STACEY10, STACEY, and the number 10 all together there, to save anytime at nofoods.com. What do an Arkansas startup and a South Korean company have in common? Well, they've each landed grants from JDRF to help them develop wearable devices for people with diabetes with type 1. The South Korean company is called EOFlow, and they just got their country's version, the Korean version of the FDA, approval for a wearable insulin pump called the EO Patch. Now, the news release says the patch's electro-osmotic pumping technology, hope I'm saying that right, allows it to be made smaller and lighter and thus suitable for children's bodies. Now, never mind that there are thousands of children wearing the Omnipod and Tandem and Medtronic, but okay, great. It is an insulin pump. It also has an integrated CGM, a closed loop program. This is the first time JDRF is granting funds to this company and the first time they're funding a company in Korea. So the big difference here is I read this is it's a wearable pump that has a CGM built in. We shall see if it comes to market, but how great would that be? So it's a Korean company, doesn't have any plans right now as I see to come to the U.S., something to follow along. And in Arkansas, SFC Fluidics is working on another different insulin delivery pod. A continuous glucose monitor and a pump would be in that pod. So they don't have yet the miniaturized technology, but they do say it would be small enough for children to wear comfortably and disposable after 3 days. They do say they are early in the process and a lot needs to be done. I'm just bringing this to your attention because, as you can see, we talked to Tandem earlier, as I mentioned with Lily and Bigfoot, everybody's trying to make this smaller and make this easier for not just children, although that's great, to wear. So will we see these come to market? We just have to wait and see. I will link it up at diabetes-connections.com. And now you know better. A couple of years ago, I noticed that there were more diabetes podcasts than I thought. In fact, it was when Diabetes Mine, a great online news source, they did an article about this. It was shortly after I had launched. They did an article about that, about different diabetes podcasts and how many different hosts and shows there were, especially for people with type 1. And I was shocked because I had looked it up and I had listened, but I thought there were 3 or 4. And come to find out, there's more than a dozen. They don't produce regularly. I don't know that anybody's on the weekly like I am every Tuesday. But there are definitely lots of people producing these. And I love this. The reason, stay with me, I'm bringing this up for a reason. One of the reasons I love it is because, this show is mostly news. A little bit of personal stuff I talk about, Benny. But I love to listen to some of the shows that have really personal stories, especially adults who live with type 1. They get down to the nitty gritty. They can share stories that I can't. I don't have type 1. And I do think it's really important to find the show that works for you. As you listen, I hope this show works for you. But if you'd like to add to your listening pleasure, Diabetes Podcast Week can help. It is coming up February 11th. I started this after seeing that Diabetes Mine article. This will be our 3rd year doing it. And basically, we all get together and help our listeners find the other shows. so that you can find the show that works for you. And we also try to help the Spare a Rose campaign. This is an annual charity event to help kids with type 1 diabetes who need insulin, who need supplies all over the world. I mean, we have it tough here in the U.S. with pricing, but we can get it. There are people all over the world who have to, walk for a day to get to their insulin supply, things like that, who don't even have a doctor, who it's, you know what I'm talking about. So Spare a Rose really helps with that. And we're asking for donations and for awareness. And that will be the week of February 11th. Please check out, all the social media that I'm on. I'll be pushing that out on Facebook and Twitter. And I'm hoping to get some coverage for it as well. And you'll see the list of all the different shows who are helping out. It is good stuff. And I'm really excited that we're 3 years in. Big thank you, as always, to my editor, John Buchanan from Audio Editing Solutions. And thank you, as you listen, for tuning in every week. I really appreciate it. Let me know what you'd like to hear more of. You can always drop me a line, Stacey at diabetes-connections.com, or join the Facebook group and let me know what you think there. All the information is always in the show notes. If you're listening on social media, just go to the homepage to find out more about what we're talking about on the show. In a podcast app, you can just click on the notes, and it's right there. Thanks again for listening. It's a privilege and a pleasure to spend an hour each week with people who just get it. I'm Stacey Sims. I'll see you back here next week.
Diabetes Connections is a production of Stacey Sims Media. All rights reserved, all wrongs avenged.